have to pick and choose which markets have the most commonalities amongst them, choose those markets, and then find products that fit in those markets. And then hopefully we can get a multi-state launch off the ground.
Hey everyone, this is Nazar Akil from Max Pro.
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Paul.
And we're 11 Pebbles.
Hi, this is Lopa Vandermersch from Rasa.
Oh, you're listening.
And you are listening to the E-Comm Show.
Welcome to the E-Comm Show, presented by BlueTuskr, the #1 place to hear the inside scoop from other e-commerce experts, where they share their secrets on how they scaled their business and are now living the dream. Now, here is your host, Andrew Maff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the E-Comm Show. I'm your host, Andrew Maff, and today I am joined by the amazing Joe Hodas of Wana Brand, who is the CMO over at Wana Brands. Joe, how you doing? Ready for a good show?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I've never been called amazing, so I appreciate that.
Really? Well,
it's a first.
Clearly, no one is paying attention.
I agree.
Super excited to have you on the show. You are one of a handful that we have had in this space. It is one of my favorite spaces to talk about because of specifically the marketing complications behind it, which always makes things fun. But I always like to do the usual, give you the opportunity here to let everyone know a little bit more about yourself, your background, a little more about Wana Brands, and we'll take it from there, right?
Yeah, sounds great. And, something you just mentioned actually is kind of tied to that, which is the challenges of marketing. That's really one of the reasons why I got into the cannabis space. And so with that, I'll kind of back up a little bit and say that, I've been in PR and marketing and advertising my entire career here in Colorado, and was with an agency back in like 2010, 2011. And a pot soda company is what they called themselves at the time, came to us and asked for a little bit of help with some brand work. And that company was Dixie Elixirs and Edibles at the time. And we did the work. I loved it. I thought it was fascinating. I'd always been a fan of cannabis and a consumer. Had always been in favor of legalization, but it wasn't a big part of my life. And then as I got to know Dixie a little bit more, we began to do some intercepts and some interesting studies about who was consuming cannabis and why. And I really began to see both the beneficial effects that it could have from a health perspective in terms of helping with pain and other issues that people were having from a health standpoint, but also that it was a variety of people that were using the product. So it wasn't what I think I perceived to be the target audience. And so that began my journey into understanding cannabis a little bit better as a business and as an industry. About the same time, the state of Colorado voted to legalize adult use cannabis. We're the first state to do so. And that was implemented January 1 of 2014. That's exactly when I began with Dixie as their chief marketing officer. So I made the jump from the agency side to Dixie on the inside of that company, and spent 4 years there helping to not only shape what was one of the first national brands in cannabis. I'll say national with air quotes because it's still a small industry, so it doesn't really count as national, but. And at the same time, I was also able to help shape some of the regulation in Colorado, which has now really become part of the national regulation that we see in multiple other states. So really, really exciting time. Bounced around to a few other companies in the cannabis space because at that point I was pretty broken. There was no way I was leaving cannabis because it was just so fascinating to be able to have so many firsts and to be able to help shape not only brands, but industries and functions and purposes. So it became, I think, a lifelong passion for me. And I joined Wana Brands about 3 years ago. It was a relationship I built with their CEO, Nancy Whiteman, co-founder and CEO, when I first started with Dixie. And so when I had an opportunity to make a move, she said, "We'd love to have you come to Wana." And that was probably the best move I made in this industry. Wana is currently the largest edibles manufacturer in North America. We're in about 15 states plus Canada, and we produce a significant amount of gummies across the country. And we are, I think, doing things a little bit differently than most cannabis companies, which is the most exciting part from a marketing perspective for me.
I truly believe that people that are in the marketing space in anything with cannabis, CBD, like anything like that, just pure artists. because day in and day out, you get people that are like, oh, if I can't track this, how am I supposed to run my business and blah, blah. I go, whatever happened to like the good old days when people were doing TVs and billboards and radio? And it's like, you can't track that stuff. So why is it all of a sudden that we're so reliant on it? So how are you able to effectively market without blowing through a budget, knowing that you can't actually tie that conversion together?
So the good news is this: our CEO and founder is a former marketer, so she kind of gets it, right?
There
So
you
that's
go.
that's half the battle, right? When you talk about getting budget, you got to have someone who understands. Like when I talk about brand awareness and I say, "Hey, we're going to do a billboard because X, Y, and Z," she gets it, right? We'd had a conversation this morning about a new platform that we have access to, which is Twitter. Whole different subject, but we talked about doing some experimenting there, and I said, I don't know what the ROI is going to look like. I don't know if I'll be able to track it in the way that I think I will. But are we willing to try it and experiment? Her answer was absolutely. Let's do that, right? So I make the case to say that as a brand awareness tool, we have access to a lot of different options, and I try to be responsible with the spend, and I also try to at least as best I can try to push traffic to a specific SKU or specific source. So at least broadly, we can say, yeah, we saw some lift here. We got creative recently with the launch of a new product here in Colorado. It's called E-Comm. It's a fast acting product that is designed to help people with anxious feelings and spiraling thoughts. Right. So it's a very low dose product. We used 5280, which is a local magazine here, to promote it. And we used a QR code in the magazine that drove to a specific dispensary that we had a partnership with so that they could use a discount in that dispensary through the magazine ad. And we saw surprisingly, a lot of conversions. That was the first time I was able to actually hold up something and say like, hey, we had 187 clicks on this QR code and 157 people bought the product. So that was a big moment for us.
Nice. So obviously in this space, when someone goes to a cart, they add it on your site. You still have the mix between the digital and the physical that you kind of have to combat and deal with. But from a digital side, what are you doing in terms of how you're able to market? Because obviously you can't run ads on anything pretty much. So you've got your SEO, like content marketing heavy side of where you kind of are trying to develop the brand as more of a thought leader. You have the social media side, which is obviously just building the audience, and you have your influencer marketing side, which is great for like local side, since obviously you've got a mix of that. So from a digital side, what has that approach been, and how are you kind of able to track the success of that?
Well, I think as we were talking about earlier, when I look at our digital channels and I look at some of the basic tools like programmatic ad buys, and there's been an evolution, by the way. So it didn't start out this way, but initial days, programmatic ad buys consisted of being able to buy ads on High Times magazine and whatever the local free publication was in whatever market, because those are the only ones that allowed for cannabis advertising. But it since has opened up, so we have access to a lot of inventory now, which is great. But it is an awareness tool, so I can ask for impressions. I can see click throughs. I can drive them even to a landing page, which is what we do sometimes. But all of that it lives in a very self-contained way, and I have to view all of it as brand awareness. I can't really do anything other than continue to push the brand out, and I try to be SKU specific with it. So at the very least, people know we have a sleep product, we have a quick calm product, we have a fast acting gummy, those kinds of things. So I'm a little bit specific with it as it relates to the SKUs that I'm highlighting. But in other channels, other digital channels, for example, you mentioned social, we actually are even more limited there than programmatic ad buys, because we can't promote I can promote education about a SKU on Instagram, but I can't say, here's what it costs, here's where you buy it, here's a direct connect to a dispensary where you can make your purchase. I can't do any of that, right? Otherwise, I risk losing my platform, which, by the way, has happened multiple times. Instagram just 3 weeks ago just said, "Oh, we got an alert that you're violating our community standards," and they shut down our platform for 5 days. No explanation, no reason why. Luckily, we had someone inside of Meta that helped us kind of get it back online, but they basically just said, "Sorry, we made a mistake, and now we have our platform back." So we have to be super, super careful about what we use social for and how we advertise on social. And by the way, when I say advertise, I mean organically.
Yeah, you
We have
can.
no access to paid advertising.
Yeah.
So it's all organic, but I have to be very, very careful, even with influencers, even when I'm paying someone else and it's their platform, and I still have to be super careful. I don't want to risk losing the 43,000 people that we have on there right now. So,
Yeah.
it all looks like brand awareness, and then I transfer that to the store because, by the way, there are so many dispensaries. There's, let's say, 500 in Colorado, 5 to 700 in Colorado. I am not trying to do the heavy lift of getting them into the dispensary for the most part. I'm presuming that they're going to go to the dispensary. I just want them to have Wana on the mind or a specific SKU that we sell when they go into that dispensary. And then I combine that with, okay, now they're in a dispensary, they see point of sale, right? So that's a big piece of my budget too. The physical asset in the store where I'm hosting my products. It has education, it has F&Bs. I have screens. I have the bud tender education I've been talking about. I have takeaway pieces. I also do a tremendous amount of physical pop-ups. So I have my brand ambassador and my field marketing team in a lot of stores in multiple states. So we have a pretty good sized field team. That's how I combine the two. Create awareness digitally, drive them to the store, let the stores drive the traffic, and then make sure that when they're in the store, it's reinforcing the message I've given them digitally.
So with that, once you do get them in the store, how are you differentiating against it feels like thousands of different, just edibles alone, there's countless of them. So how are you kind of able to let the product line stand out in a market that A, is so crowded, but is also just getting more and more competition like every day?
Yeah, it's the competition as well as significant price compression. Obviously, those two are related, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the price compression is real. So oftentimes we have to be aware that our premium pricing is not for everybody. We have a premium product line. We put organic ingredients. We put a lot of really additional elements into our products that other brands don't have. So innovation is one way that I differentiate our products on the shelf because we have the only fast acting anti-anxiety product, which is our quick calm product, right? No one else has a product like that. It's very unique. So when they go into the store, if I've done a good job with the bud tenders and I've created some education around it, then that consumer will be identified as a person who might benefit from this given product. But I also have a lot of in-store materials so that it's very clear to the consumer when they're in there that this is a product that might be a good fit for them. But in terms of like on the shelf, that's really hard. So I go back to the bud tender education piece, and I'll be honest. Bud tenders, helping them along with bud tender incentives. Probably the biggest line item I have in my budget right now is swag, which sounds silly to say,
I
but
bet.
like
Yeah.
this hat, there we spend a lot of money on that because that's what helps motivate the bud tenders. They wear it in store. They share it. They are consumers as well, by the way. So it's important that we are front and center for them and top of mind, so that when someone does come in and they say, "What's your favorite gummy?" The answer is Wana.
And because of all of the regulations and how they're differentiated in each state, does that make marketing in each state that much more complicated, or are you able to kind of implement your marketing approaches in all of the states where you're currently available and can?
Oh no, it's super easy, no problems. Um,
That's good.
our this is how sad it is. Our biggest goal for the latter half of this year is to actually create a product and marketing launch across multiple states at the same time. Can you imagine? Right? Because we
Crazy.
can't we haven't been able to do that really because of the regulations you're talking about, because of even things like in certain markets, like the product I was mentioning earlier, it has L-theanine. Some markets don't allow other over-the-counter ingredients to be in the product. It can only be the cannabis and other cannabinoids, right? So we can't sell that product in every market. Some markets don't allow, like Florida, my packaging has to be black and white. I'm not allowed any color on my packaging in Florida. In fact, the gummies have to be colorless as well, which is kind of weird. So I can't create materials and spread them across multiple markets simultaneously. I have to pick and choose which markets have the most commonalities amongst them, choose
Mhm.
those markets, and then find products that fit in those markets, and then hopefully we can get a multi-state launch off the ground.
It's every time I talk to someone who does marketing in this industry, it's like every other brand has it so easy. Like no one thinks like state by state marketing because they have to. How do you keep track of all of that? Because they're changing obviously all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a great question, and they do change a lot, and oftentimes the governing bodies in each state, which by the way are different, right? It's the liquor board, it's the marijuana enforcement division here in Colorado, it's whoever they if you're tied in really locally, you might get some of those updates. With us using partners in each of our market, we're counting on them to know if there's a change to the regulations that relates to packaging or marketing or something else to be aware of it. We have a compliance team internally that also helps, and then there's also third parties that's all they focus on is keeping up to date on the compliance at a federal, state, local, and even down to like county and super local jurisdictions, because
Jeez.
each state generally, when they legalize, they allow counties and cities to opt in or out of programs and to create their own rules. So the city of Denver has its own sort of governing body that helps to dictate and mandate what can be done underneath the state umbrella of what's allowable. So they can't do something that's not already allowed by the state, but they can translate the rules and regs how they choose to for their city.
You mentioned earlier the programmatic side. Obviously, that's primarily like display ads, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But you also mentioned, are you getting into Twitter? Did Twitter open up allowing cannabis ads, or are you just doing an organic side?
No, they have. Okay, so this is relatively
Did
new.
they?
This is
I
in the
missed that.
last month and a half, I'd say
Okay,
maybe
that's
2 months, that Twitter has begun to allow for cannabis advertising. But the first time I talked with them was before they announced it publicly, and we were kind of going back and forth on what they're proposing, and it became pretty clear that they didn't understand the industry. So I tell you that not to say I'm so smart and they're not, but because it's obviously their Twitter, they're smart people, but more so to say it is so complex. It has taken in the last month and a half, I've gotten 3 different new iterations of their advertising regs and how they're treating cannabis, because it has evolved so rapidly as they've begun to realize, like, oh, well, this language doesn't really apply, nor does it work. Or, oh, if we do this, we're excluding this entire category of the industry that might, want to be on the platform. So it's been a pretty complicated dance, but it is an interesting opportunity because it's the first major social platform to allow for cannabis advertising. I have my own opinions about where Twitter's going and all the political elements and the ownership of all that, but it is it is a first for the industry because we still can't use anything Meta, we still can't use Google, so we're prohibited from all those. Twitter might offer an interesting differentiated approach to us for content outside of programmatic and some of the other digital channels we've used previously.
Yeah. So with all of the limitations you have, right? Like I could be here all day listing your limitations. What's the one thing that you wish that like your traditional e-commerce seller, your traditional like digital marketer, or just like regular marketer, like what's the one thing that you're like, I wish we could just have that?
Well, I don't know if this is quite the answer you're looking for, but e-commerce, like literally e-commerce.
Yeah.
Like if I
Yeah.
could sell a product on my site and ship it, right? And I'll put all the age gates and restrictions in place and do all that. But if I could just allow myself to sell directly to the consumer, and to be able to ship that way, that would be huge.
Yeah.
Now I say that we have a lot of really great brick and mortar dispensary partners, and they're our partners because they've been the channel through which we have to sell our products. So it wouldn't be something I would say like overnight I would move immediately to an e-commerce model, but just the ability to be able to reach the consumer directly, see a conversion, have the data, understand who's buying the product, and to be able to make sure that when I speak to them, I can be positive that if they have said I want this product, they put it in their cart and they buy it, then I know that, versus then sending them to a brick and mortar store and not be able to connect the two.
I get that. I would agree with that. You think how far out you think it'll be until that actually becomes a reality?
Well, if you if you don't mind indulging me for a second, I'm going to tell you something that's a little bit related to what you just asked, but also that goes back to some of these challenges. We as an industry right now, as a regulated cannabis industry, are really fighting 3 different battles. So the one you mentioned, which is the existing competitive landscape within dispensaries and for the consumer's mind and hearts. 2, we're combating the illicit market, which is still huge. I just saw an estimate from New Frontier Data that estimates it's still at about $74 billion, which is 2 to 3x the current legal market. So the illicit market is still huge, right? We're competing with them on a regular basis from a pricing perspective primarily. And then lastly, this one is relatively new, but more direct to the question you're asking. There is a whole set of products that are hemp derived now. I don't know if you've been following this at all, but there's Delta 9, Delta 8, THCO, all of which are derived from hemp, which was technically legalized through the Farm Bill in 2018. But subsequently, many have found these loopholes to be able to create synthesized Delta 9, which is the active chemical in THC or molecule in THC, to create that from hemp and then sell it online and in C-stores and in liquor stores or wherever. They are not subject to the same regulations that the regulated cannabis industry is, yet it's still the same substance, right? So I just yesterday, just to experiment, I bought some Delta 9 products, 5 milligrams of THC per unit online, no age gating, shipped directly to my house. I haven't received it yet, but it is definitely a whole new world that they do have access to the things that we don't, and no one is really minding that shop right now.
Yeah, the Delta 9 thing, I mean, that blew up, at least in my opinion, overnight. I feel like all of a sudden every gas station was like, we have this Delta 9, and then all these ads, and I was like, okay. It's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. It's every year there's something new. Some state opens it up while another one takes it down, and it's just left and right. It's going to be, I commend you for tolerating it.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I'll tell you what I tell my team all the time is, it feels like we're pounding our head against the wall, but as a marketer, it teaches you how to be really smart, how to overcome hurdles, and how to think differently and get around problems. And so I think from that standpoint, the training is great.
Exactly. Joe, really appreciated you having you on the show. I know you're super busy, so I will use this opportunity to wrap things up. I'd love for you to let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, more about Wana Brands.
Well, great. Wana Brands, our website, wanabrands.com. Most of all of our social handles are at Wana Brands. I'm at Joe Hodas, Hodas, and welcome any connections. And I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Of course, everyone that tuned in, thank you as well. Please make sure you do the usual, rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff, or head over to ecommshow.com to check out all of our past episodes. But as usual, I appreciate you all joining, and we will see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to the E-Comm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The E-Comm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the E-Comm Show.